wanted to make sure that we were capturing as much of the cost that we could for our staff in those fee increases. So there's a whole range. It would take a while for us to go through each one of them. A lot of them stay the same, but you'll see that there's a few in that chart that Mr. Sarnoff provided. It's very clear which ones are proposed to go up.
There's one I had a question on chapter 278. That's work without a permit, failure to obtain a permit or to pay the fee noted above prior to taking action associated with the permit, or the fee shall double. It says no fee and then double the fee. So it's going to be, if you don't do that, there'll then be an extra $170. Is that right?
Yeah, basically right now, if we catch someone doing work without a permit for plumbing and also electrical, they just pay the regular base permit fee. This is a penalty for doing work without a permit. We already have a precedent in our code for building permits, and that's double the fee. So we felt that it was appropriate to match that sort of penalty provision for the plumbing and the electrical work as well.
Okay, so the basic fee, the basic fee for plumbing is going up by $10, and if we catch you doing it without, it's now 170.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Does somebody else have any questions?
Yeah, I do. We call them like third-party appeals. If a resident wants to challenge a building permit, I just don't think we should be charging these. It's 4 times the amount that people have been paying, and there haven't been that many of them. And I think this protects residents if a permit is issued in error. So I think in many cases when residents have done this, they've been successful. So I don't think we should put that barrier up to residents.
Where is that, Nora?
It's on Dan's memo at the top of page 2. So it's 342 zoning, application for notice of appeal.
Yeah, I had noticed that huge jump too. I think it's because our costs are really are huge on these ZBA hearings. They're huge.
That was one of them that we looked at staff time in consideration.
But when those appeals are taken, who typically wins?
I don't have the historic knowledge to answer that.
In many cases, it's the resident. So I think it's really, it's the village that made a mistake, and I don't think we should be charging the resident for when the village makes a mistake.
Okay.
Right, but it's not exclusively when the village makes mistakes. I mean, they're not always wrong, and that doesn't mean.
Well, I mean, let's get the history of it. But I'm thinking the ones that I can recall in the last few years were the residents prevailed. The permit was issued in error.
Okay, but
So I think, before we would raise them, I think we really need to know. To really know how many have been filed and what the outcomes have been.
and what does the rest of the board think about that?
I think that's a very good point that's been raised.
George Latimer is on. I just have to enable him.
All right, let's go back to this. Give the county executive off a couple minutes. Can you enable him?
George, is that you? George?
Maybe Mark.
George, is that you?
Yeah, that's me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, we can.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, we can't see you, but we can all hear you.
Good. I work a lot better with the voice only. I can wait until you finish this dialogue. I don't want to interrupt the flow of your meeting.
This will probably go longer, and we don't have a lot of time, so if you're here now, and I know you have places to go tonight.
Okay, very good. Then I'll be quick. I appreciate the opportunity to just interrupt, and since you're having a meeting by phone or by Zoom, that's why I'm on board. Just want to give you an idea of where we are in the county right now and elsewhere. We are up to 2,800, almost 2,900 cases as of this morning. The governor announced that number. In Mamaroneck Village, we have 16 cases that we have verified. There may be more cases out there that have not yet been verified, where we have to check with the patient and all of that. There is a shared file that the mayor and the chief of police have access to, and your EMS and your fire department will know whenever they're going to a person's address if they have tested positively for the virus, so they can be prepared for it. However, by HIPAA laws, we're not supposed to share that information widely, so we should not talk about any individual's health situation or circumstances other than the first providers. But at 16 cases, if you look around Westchester County, communities of similar size have similar number of cases, 14 in Rye City, 13 in the unincorporated section of Mamaroneck, 14 in Larchmont, 12 in Rye Brook. So you're in that zone based on population, which seems to be what's happened in most cases. And the bigger the city, the higher the number. Of course, New Rochelle, because they did a lot of testing right in the heart of that group that was with the first person, has a much higher number in the 200s. But Yonkers is at 145 and so forth. Here's what we're doing at 100 miles an hour. We've set aside the county center for temporary hospital beds. When we max out on our hospitals, the county center will be used for additional hospital beds. We don't quite know how many they'll handle, but we know we're at some point, if this surge hits and a lot of people get sick all at once, we're going to need additional services. And we've given to the state, because the state's going to run it, we've given them additional places that they could look at and use. Places like United Hospital are not usable. We've checked it out. One inside the building, it's not stable enough to operate in. But we know we have Arrowwood and some other places that we could fall back on. Our Emergency Operations Center is distributing PPE, personal protective equipment, hand sanitizer. I gather the village has put in orders for these things on their own behalf or for whatever other organizations, a fire department, police department, or whatever. It's a slow process. We get the stuff from the state and then we redistribute it. If you're having any problems, reach out to me or Catherine Parker, and we'll go to bat for you to try to get as much of that stuff as you need. We hope there won't be a shortage of these things because they're essential, and particularly the personal protective equipment. You don't want to send somebody out in any capacity to deal with an individual who may have the virus and the person responding is not properly protected. You're well aware that we have a Glen Island Center now run by the state that's doing testing. We have a second center that the Westchester Medical Center is doing. I just heard today St. Joe's and Yonkers is also setting up a testing center. We got a lot of people that need to be tested just, to fill up a backlog. People who had contact with folks who were positive, people in the same household. But Westchester County has tested more people per capita than any other county in New York State, more than percentage-wise than New York City. That in part explains for the high number of positives, but it also means we have more negatives as a percentage, far more negatives as a percentage. We're calling all nurses as much as possible. Lindsay Jackson, whom you know is a village resident, works in our DPW department, is a Rye-Town councilwoman. She is the point for anybody who is a nurse or a healthcare professional and wants to volunteer and help out. We could use the help because not only do we need beds, but we need qualified people to help do that. Beeline buses starting today. There's no fare on them. You can ride for free. It's not a big thing in Mamaroneck, but it's because we're closing off the front of the bus to protect the bus driver. So you have to go into the back of the bus and then you don't pay a fare, get a free ride, but at least this way the bus drivers don't get sick and they can keep driving the buses because we want to make sure we still have that mass transit. We've been working with our school districts to provide some daycare slots because now that they're closed, and they're probably going to be closed for a while, kids of the first responders need to have daycare so mom and dad can do whatever their jobs are. And we've worked with both Mamaroneck and Rye-Neck districts. I'm not sure what they have exactly, but we're working with all the school districts in the county. We've kept all of our parks open, but we're trying to enforce social distancing. And, that's hard to do because it's not our normal way of operating. But we're allowing, most of the things that happen in the parks to happen. We have shut down the playgrounds in the park because kids will use the monkey bars, so to speak, or the swings, and we can't possibly sanitize them after every use. So that portion of the park is shut down. You certainly can walk around the hiking trail, Saxon Woods and Playland and so forth. We are allowing the golf courses to stay open. Some people get upset about that because golf, is seen as an upscale sport and you can't play basketball, which is a people's sport. But in basketball, you're up close and personal, touch football. Golf, you can distance yourself. So to the extent that the weather is good enough for people to play at Saxon Woods or elsewhere, the parks are open and the golf courses are open. Our economic development team under Bridget Gibbons is working to get a clearinghouse of information. We know we have devastation in our small businesses, in a lot of our workforce. Certainly the restaurant industry, hospitality industry is devastated right now. And we don't know, how we're going to bounce back from that yet, but we're certainly going to try. And, we're going to need the feds to help us out, but we're going to try to organize as much as we can. Bridget Gibbons in our office, 995-2900, is a point person. If there's anybody from the village staff that wants to talk to her and find out whatever it is we can do, we'll do our best to try to do that. And then just to wrap up, we're involved with a hotline, the 211 hotline, which gets about 1,200, as many as 1,500 calls a day. The lines are long and waiting because lots of people are calling, asking for information. We're trying to put enough people on the line, some folks who speak Spanish. And then if you have a need to move in a different direction, we'll try to refer you to the right people for the more detailed questions. Biggest problem for people is knowing what do they do about getting tested. And the first step is to go to your doctor, call your doctor. Don't go to your doctor, call your doctor. Go over the symptoms with them on the phone. Don't walk into urgent care. Don't walk into a medical center or the doctor's office because you might infect everybody who's sitting there waiting. But if they write your prescription for a test, hopefully we're moving along on the testing so people can get tested. Then if they find out they're positive, they have to quarantine. They have to isolate. They have to stay out for at least 14 days. That's no idea of fun. It messes up your life, but it's what we have to do to stop the contagion. I'm going to stop there, take any questions, Mr. Mayor, that you or your members have, and then let you get on with your business.
George, thank you very much. I just hope that the state, and as it trickles down to us, keeps doing what they're doing, because I think there's going to be, and there is, you hear it already, a lot of pushback from business interests to get the economy back to normal, and that we really don't need to shut down that much, and with this, the cure is worse than the disease, and the only people who aren't saying that are the doctors. So
right.
I hope that we can put dollars and cents to the side and work on saving lives.
Well, that's what it comes down to, Tom. We've never seen anything like this, so this is uncharted waters. None of us in elective office, not you, not me, we're not scientists, we're not medical professionals. We saw what happened in China. We saw what happened in Italy. If we took the attitude, well, the business of America is business, let's keep going, we know that we'd have more people infected. And then if all those people get sick in a tight time frame, we don't have enough health care to save enough of them. And when you start seeing what's happened in Italy this weekend, they lost like 350 people a day, 3 straight days. That's like the stuff you hear in a war zone. And, so yes, businesses are suffering, but families are suffering when you lose 1,000 people over a weekend.
Yep.
And that's really what our top priority has been. But, the decision to shut down these businesses did come from the governor. He made the tough decision. And, we're going to do our best to administer it. And if there's anything that the county can do for the village, pick up the phone and call us. We're your partners. I know sometimes we're a little slow off the block, but we're sincere about wanting to be with you.
Thank you. Does anybody on the board have any questions for George?
I just want to say you're doing a great job, and thank you for all the efforts that you're undertaking.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
And, if there's anything we can do to help the situation along, I know I was on the call today and I asked about the day camps, because that's going to be an important issue in the village of Mamaroneck in the next coming weeks. And I know you'll get back to us with an answer.
Yeah, Tom, do you have a drop dead date by which you have to decide yay or nay in order to do the program?
No, I will find out for you, George. But
Yep.
I don't know off the top of my head.
I can tell you from our standpoint, if we want to open Playland on time in mid-May, which is probably a little earlier than you would do your thing, we have a drop dead date of next week. So more likely than not, we're going to open Playland later, but there's a chance we don't open it at all.
Yeah.
Our beaches are May 31st, or a Memorial Day weekend opening, and the drop dead date for that is probably about a month out. By the 1st of May, we have to know if we're going to open the beaches and the pools, of which we have a number around the county. Those pools open right after the normal school is over, like June 25th, 26th, and that drop dead date's about a month out. So we got a little ways to go. If we're in the same position that we're in right now, we're not opening pools, we're not opening beaches. It breaks my heart. You know how I'm trying to save Playland, and I'm so proud that we reopened the pools out in Yonkers, but we don't have a choice if we're in the same place then that we are today. Hopefully we'll be past that point. We'll be on the downside of the curve.
I have a question.
Questions for George?
I have a question after thanking you for all you're doing. Have you heard anything about maybe postponing the deadline for the budgets?
The governor says that he's still operating on an April 1st budget, but I have seen the state budget go as late, in my experience, as August. And I know in other years it's gone later. So the state budget could roll, and they would use continuing resolutions to keep the state running. The problem that the state has is the same problem that the county has, and maybe the same that the local governments have. We are seeing a dead fall in our revenue. I mean, like a free fall, a revenue drop. And our expenses, because of emergency purposes, are rising well above anything we budgeted. So we don't even know, what we're going to do other than go into our reserve fund and if we have enough of it, balance the budget before the end of the year. And of course, I think we all fear that we may face layoffs and things that are draconian, the ending of services because of this situation. So our budgets are contingent on theirs, and of course, you have a budget year. That's a mid-year budget scenario. So depending on what the state does will have a lot to do with where you guys go. I had hoped that we'd have robust sales tax revenue for you. That additional money was going to be helpful to everybody. But now there's not only not the additional money, there's not the original amount of money. And, to that extent, we're having a budget session on Thursday to try to get some clarity of our circumstances, which we're going to share with the mayors and the supervisors when we talk to them on Friday afternoon.
George, I think that what Trustee DeFore might have been getting at was, is there any hope of the deadline for village budgets being pushed back by Albany?
I haven't heard it. I haven't heard it at this stage of the game. I would suggest you give Shelley or Steve a call. They're going to be up in Albany at the end of the week from what they said. I saw Shelley earlier today, but they would have an idea if there's even been on the table. I have not heard it discussed on the table for a formal delay of village or, for that matter, school district budgets, both of which come this time of the year.
Yeah, we did have a brief conversation with them. They're going to be working on the school budgets become even more problematic because people have to go to vote.
Right. I wish if I hear something, I'll certainly let you know informally, but the harsh reality of it is we don't know.
Thank you. There's so many things that are variables right now. 2 weeks.
Yeah, we're all flying with on instruments.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, the Board of Trustees meeting, and this was kind of on the horizon, but nobody thought we'd be where we are now.
No. Well, we certainly didn't. I mean, we were tracking coronavirus from the end of January, and we had some public statements in late January and mid-February, and we were trying to make preparations. But once we saw what happened in the full force of China and the full force of Italy, but look, there's only so much a village government can do, and there's only so much a county government can do. We're a bigger, wealthier government than you are, but we can't make businesses build ventilators. We don't have that kind of authority. And then you go to the state government. The state government could shut down certain things, but the state government can't, rearrange, doctors to be available. There's certain things that the federal government has to do, and that's for another debate, another day.
Okay.
If there's no other questions, I'm going to thank you for your interruption. It's always good to talk to you, and I hope to see all of you. I'm sure I will informally, from a safe, proper social distance.
Thank you.
George.
Thank you, George.
Stay safe.
Okay. Thank you all. You too. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Okay. Why don't we do this? We're getting back to what we were doing. The zoning Board of Appeal notices, right? Why don't we take that out for right now and put it on the side and have staff come up with more reason. If they have to increase it at all, come up with more reasonable numbers or justify why. So this doesn't hold up the whole shooting match here.
Yeah.
I also would like to suggest, this is Dan, that all of them have to do with residential, and there may be appeals that do not deal with residential, and that doesn't seem to be there.
Okay. I know what I need to look at.
Okay. I also have one other question, if I may. Back to the alarm fees. It's not much, you're going up $10, but I don't quite understand. The rationale is for time spent. If somebody has a problem with the alarm, they get fined. So I'm not quite sure why we're raising them. I'm just
The only
curious.
thing after for the first 3 are free. So after the 4th alarm, they start getting charged for false alarm penalties.
So if it's the issue of the false alarms,
Yeah.
then why don't we just lower it to 2 false alarms are free, and then after that you pay?
But then I was on the board when we originally did this years ago, and the idea was to not discourage people from having alarms, because what we were trying to do is encourage as many people as possible to have an alarm. And a lot of times, especially when alarms are initially put in, there'll be glitches. So in the first couple of months, you might get a few alarms, and then usually that gets worked out, and you might not ever get a false alarm again. So the idea behind it was this is usually something that happens, in the initial installation, and we wanted to not discourage people from putting in alarms, so that we made it, if it had chronic problems.
I have a question
Yes, Victor.
on traffic and the annual fee for decals parking in the general parking area regatta, 260 to 575. And how much would that give us and the rationale?
Isn't this something that we talked about months ago?
Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, originally the fee
Thank you.
for the RP permit was tied to the fact that there were a number of units that didn't have additional parking spaces. There were a number of units that were to remain affordable for 20 years. Since the regatta has now been in existence for 22, 23 years, we recommended an increase in the fee because there's nothing to tie it to affordable units anymore. And that's what we discussed with the board several months back. This and also Continental View, but we didn't recommend an increase for Continental View this year because the permit sales that will take place for Continental View won't take place until the year after next. The schedule with the Continental View requires that we don't need to do that one now, basically. But regatta does come up during the fiscal year. Sorry for being a little convoluted there.
How much is that giving us? Do you have recall? Do you recall how much would that increase represent? That's what I'm asking.
Oh,
I'm trying to find it in the budget, but I can't. It's not that important.
Well, we wouldn't necessarily show it in the budget because it has to be approved by the board.
I mean, in the tentative budget.
No, but the fee increase hasn't been approved by the board. Unless we put it in there, let me check.
Actually, that's a good point. Aren't all these increases we're talking about reflected in section 2 of the tentative budget?
Mm-hmm.
I think they are.
Yep.
Which is, I think, the larger issue that we probably, I'm sure staff's going to get at it with all the things you have to do. Also revisit this because some of course are the larger issues like the sales tax, and others are very small, like certain licenses and things. So this whole section of the tentative budget, in a way, will have to be looked at.
Yeah. We didn't reflect. It's on page in tab the revenues. It's on page 2 of 10. It's the second from the bottom, RP regatta permits. We haven't adjusted the revenue because there's no fee increase that's been approved. But yeah, I think you're probably talking, maybe $5,000 or $6,000, give or take. I mean, if it's budgeting for, we're recommending a $300 increase. Probably should be about, 8,000 or 9,000 when everything's said and done, maybe 10. But I don't know the exact number of permits off my head. I think it's a minimal amount of permits. I think it's less than 20.
But you can't put it in a regular budget until you get it approved by the board.
Correct.
We can't count our chickens until they're hatched,
Before the hatch.
before they're hatched.
And before.
Okay.
Okay. This isn't on for regular meeting, is it?
No, it was on for discussion, and we can put on, if you want, we can put on for the next meeting of the board.
Well, taking out the chapter 342 zoning fees, we take them out. Is everybody else okay with putting this on for the next meeting?
Sure.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
We'll lose the zoning fees in the future. All right. All right, bang into executive session. So look, this is second. Hang give me 1 second. Okay. I need a motion to go into executive session for the Hampshire LLC, the Village of Mamaroneck, the Village of Mamaroneck Planning Board. It is anticipated that a motion will be offered to enter into executive session pursuant to 105(1)(d) of the New York State Public Officers Law to discuss current litigation.
So moved.
Second.
Call roll.
Trustees Winthrop,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Nora,
Yes.
Support,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yep. Okay, now how are we going to executive session?
Okay, I'm going to mute our microphone and we're gonna call in. Everybody needs to call in to executive session. And Jerry emailed everybody the call-in number.
Should they mute their own microphones?
Please mute your own microphones.
Mute the microphone on your computer.
I don't have the number, Augie.
We can email it to you, Bob.
Okay, and yeah, please do. Oh, I got it. I found it.
Can someone email me also the call-in number for executive session, please?
You shouldn't hold up the phone number to the camera.
I'm not on. Can someone text it or email it me, please?
I did. I just emailed you.
Okay, Dan just emailed everybody the new executive number.
Code.
Please do not hold it up to the screen.
What? What's the new code?
What's the new code?
He just emailed it to you.
Welcome. 600.
but you want to be ready.
Cliff, we just finished with executive session.
I'm going to start getting everyone connected.
Cliff, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Dan.
Thank you.
I have a screen that says executive session in process.
Yeah, Cliff will take that down.
Ah, great, thank you.
Don't forget to turn your cameras back
Um, I can't turn my camera back on because the host has stopped it.
on. Oh,
He's going through it right now and enabling everybody.
Can you see me, anybody?
No.
No.
I think
Greg is raising his hand, by the way. I don't know if that matters to anyone.
What's happening?
Greg Cutler's raised his hand. He's in attendance and he's raising his hand.
Oh,
I see that.
he's not on mine yet.
He won't pop up on your main screen. He's under participants on the sidebar and it says attendees.
Oh, I see.
Oh.
That's the book, Christy. That's the right one.
That is it?
Okay.
Cliff, the main computer is not on. That is the main.
There
yeah.
Do we have everybody? Dan, Victor, Nora, Kelly. I think we have the whole gang.
Just a reminder to unmute your microphones.
I need a motion to end the work session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of ending the work session?
Aye.
Okay, thank
Actually, you need to, no, forget it.
you. What?
I thought you needed to come out of executive session in the regular meeting, but
No, we ended executive session.
yeah, I remember that.
But also tuning in, we're coming out of an executive session at the end of our work session. We just ended our work session. We're about to begin the regular board meeting of the Village of Mamaroneck in a style that's never been tried before in this community. We are all at separate locations. We are all socially distancing as per the orders of Governor Cuomo, who has changed the law to allow this to happen. These are tough times, but you know we are going to keep the government going. Please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. You might as well keep up. I.
Reason.
Flag.
United States of America.
Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. You have, you must in your own homes know where the exits are. Prepare yourself if you have to use an emergency exit. Okay. First item is communication to the board.
Open the meeting.
I need a motion to open this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
First item is communication to the board. Don't see anybody in the docket.
1 second.
We're gonna look to see if anybody's.
Okay.
Nobody there. Okay. All right. The next item is public hearings. The first one is the fiscal year 2021 tentative budget. Who's going to handle this? Mr. Barbario?
I'll give it a shot.
All right. Why don't you run us through this?
So Mayor, the budget was presented to the Board of Trustees on March 13th, right in the middle of what seems to be an ever-changing environment, a daily changing environment. We put together a budget along with a lot of hard work. We did some trial and error. We went through a process where all of the department heads were asked to come in and discuss what they needed, what they were looking for in the budget. And that budget number was extremely high. And so what we did was we went back and we looked through everything, and we presented the Board of Trustees, except for the increases that are required for us to conform to the order of consent. We have a budget that was presented that is cap compliant, except for the increases required for us to manage the order of consent. And so that's the budget that we presented. I have a budget presentation that Dan and Jason helped me put together. But I'm not sure if the numbers at this time are going to be, well, I know they're not going to be anywhere near what we're looking at down the line.
Jerry?
So what we have is a redo right in the middle of our public hearing.
I can't hear you. Jerry? Once again, I stumbled. I need a motion to open this hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Call roll.
Trustees Winthrop,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
DeFour,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. All right, Jerry, I know you sent us areas of the budget that might be problematic.
Yeah.
Marked in yellow recently, I think today.
Today.
Because of probable, almost certain economic downturn.
Yes.
Just outline them.
Two items are significant and make up 75% of what I sent the board earlier today. One of them is sales tax distribution, and the other is on-street parking meter fees. That makes up 75% of the anticipated loss in the first 2 months that Augie and Jonathan and Laura and the finance staff helped me put together. That loss is potentially $750,000 in the first 2 months of this budget cycle.
So that's over 3 points.
Correct. That's just at 3 points.
Okay.
And that's just until the end of July, what we're looking at. And you know as well as I do, we watch the same press conferences daily. No one can tell us where this ends. The governor had a 5-month span yesterday of 4 to 9 months. So I have no idea.
Right. Okay, so.
Jerry, for every 1%, what's the amount?
258,000 is a basis point.
Okay.
So what we're faced with, obviously, is to look at this budget almost on a daily and weekly basis as we learn information. If we start to flatten the curve, if things are starting to get better, if people are actually listening to the directives and socially distancing themselves and staying home, and this is working its way through, and there's a forecast of an end date, that'll be fine. We have asked for some guidance in potentially extending the deadline, the budget deadline. I'm not sure. It seems a little complicated, a little bit more complicated than my former municipality, my former state. But the truth is, our staff will have to look at this every single day and update it based on the information that we're provided. And we have great public officials. We have a great county executive. We have a great governor who are on the ball. They're on top of it. We just don't know when this is going to end. If we had that date today, I could present you some real numbers. I just don't have that date.
You know, 9 days ago, it was a real open issue about whether the school should even close. Right? Now it seems like, what were we thinking? Of course, the school should have closed. So this is moving so fast that I see your problem that it's hard to budget for. I mean, 3 weeks ago, this wasn't even a fiscal problem on the horizon.
No.
So just for folks who are watching at home, how sales tax works in Westchester County, all the cities except for Rye and I think Peekskill collect their own sales tax for their own community. So if you buy something in New Rochelle or White Plains or Mount Vernon or Yonkers, percentage of that sales tax goes directly to that city. The rest goes up to Albany. How it works in the rest of the municipalities is all the sales tax money gets pooled, and some goes to the county, and then the county distributes per capita. This is why the census is so important. Per capita to each of the municipalities a share of that revenue. A big driver of that revenue is gasoline. Gasoline prices are going down, and people aren't driving. People aren't going anywhere. So this is going to be a rough few months for our residents. A lot of people are going to be out of work. A lot of people are going to be hungry. This is, but hopefully, the help of God, this is a momentary valley, and the underlying economy before this happened was strong, and hopefully we'll bounce back. But we don't even know that. I'm just whistling past the graveyard.
Even the comptroller's attempt at this, as late as last Tuesday, I believe, and one of the smartest individuals I've ever met. I worked with him over 25 years ago. His guidance or his letter to the governor he's throwing up his arms. He has no idea. He did have a recommendation for the governor to and the legislature to consider using some kind of a rainy day fund and using rainy day resources. It's basically savings, but I don't know. I don't know how bad it's going to be. I don't know how the response is going to continue. I know the response is costing millions of dollars a day, and so that depletes a rainy day fund extremely quickly. We are in the same situation. We're not collecting revenue off of our parking meters, sales tax. Well, nobody's buying anything except food, thankfully. So we have no idea this year as far as the impact. We still have, 10 more weeks left this year of a budget that we won't even come close to what we projected.
Jerry, how have the last couple weeks and the COVID village response efforts impacted overtime? Are we incurring a lot of overtime expenses under this emergency?
Not on my side. Not on my side, Kelly, but the police department has a significant impact in overtime. And that may increase if we do have individuals that are out. There will start to be an impact in overtime in the police department. We've done well. It was one of those banner years. We were doing really well with snow overtime. We were doing really well with revenue and revenue projections, especially meters and sales tax. And I keep going back to those two because it is a huge part of our revenue. But because we're in a state of emergency, I'm not too concerned about the overtime and the response that we have. We'll probably get 75% and as high as 100% reimbursement on our, since we declared an emergency on the 16th and the governor declared the emergency on the 7th, and I believe the county might have been on the 13th. We will eventually get a reimbursement from FEMA. It's going forward that we just have no idea what curtain to look behind.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Anybody have any other questions for Jerry?
Yeah, this is Dan. First of all, I appreciate the entire hard work that you've done in the human's job. And the budget, as you indicate, has many issues. We're not going to make the revenue projections for this year, at least for the remaining couple of months, which is going to have an impact. And FEMA's not going to reimburse us for the parking meters. They will for overtime, but not for the rest. But we're over your budget on the prior to all of this. It exceeds the cap.
Yes.
By three. I can't remember 3 point. I can't remember what the
By
exact percentage.
391,000.
Okay. And the way I look at it, the rainy day fund needs to be used for rainy day fund, but only not for operating expenses, for things that were not anticipated and not able to be undertaken otherwise, and it was necessary to be done. And if we start doing that, then we have a problem, because we don't know how long this will last, and then that becomes a problem. So there are three areas to look at. One is, I don't think we should be exceeding the cap. Two, we need to really take a very hard look what you're doing, on the revenue projections, which aren't going to make what we want. Which then means that for adjustments, we only have two areas to look at. One is personnel and one is programs. There is nothing in the budget that is not meaningful and desirable. I don't, I'm not suggesting that there is, but I am suggesting that not only do we have a problem, but we have many of our citizens who have lost their jobs. Hopefully it's temporary. Welfare, and Social Security and all the other sources of revenue are not going to make it up. Hopefully they will do part of it. We have people that were on the village payroll that are not going to be on the payroll right now, such as school crossing guards. As I understand it, we're not paying them because there's nothing for them. Their jobs are not operative. So it's not a question of trying to one day on, one day off or something like that. So my concern is that we need to take a really hard look. We have items in the budget of personnel that for either new positions or other positions that are unstaffed. We need to take a hard look and determine whether or not, they should be staffed at all or being postponed. Not a question that the reason for the position and the reason for the program that they are to assist on is not admirable. But by the same token, we have to tighten our belts, and we don't know how long this is going to last. But all projections would indicate that it's not going to be over shortly. Things are being canceled in May, June, July, August, September, and we just canceled stuff in October because of this. Part of it is the planning for events, and part of it is, we just don't know where it is and what's going to happen, and how fast people can get back on their feet. So the way I look at it, we have about $1.6 million that we needed, a minimum that we would need to take out of the budget. Not suggesting that that's a hard figure, but I'm just looking at, based on what you've said, the revenue projections that are of concern in getting under the 2% cap. And my suggestion is there are two ways of doing this. I would prefer that staff take a really hard look, not that they haven't already, but on a different set of scenarios to see what can be postponed for a year. And if things get better, maybe we can then re-implement them later on. But, or then we have to do that. But one way or another, I think we have to take a really very hard look at what's going on, because we have people who won't be able to afford to pay because they don't have the income and they have to eat and take care of their families. And it's not a desirable position to be in, but it's a very hard, it's one of those things that we really have to take a very, very hard look at. Anyway, that's my thought process. I'd like to hear from others.
Well, I think what we have to be clear about here too now is the reason this budget is over the cap is because we have not approved the sewer use fee. If we had approved the sewer use fee, this current budget before these emergencies would have been cap compliant.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that this board approves the sewer use fee, and at least we can get this tentative budget under the cap.
But
then you talking right now.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This isn't a rainy day. I don't know what a rainy day is. This is the worst situation I have ever seen since I've been in government. This is the worst situation I've seen since I've been alive. This is going to be akin to the Great Depression. We can thank Augie for squirreling this money away over the 10 years. And because if he hadn't been frugal and with his and very conservative with his projections, we didn't have an opportunity to even react to this.
It's true.
You know, I think we have to look at, you know, what has to be done to get through this. And, you know, I'm in favor of, you know, not just jettisoning people. I'm in favor of, you know, keeping the people that have been doing a good job here forever. You know, this is the taxpayers' money. They paid it already. And, you know, this is why we have it. I don't know. I mean, of course, we have to look at the budget again, and Jerry and Augie and the whole crew has to take another look at this now that, you know, we're in a dystopian nightmare here. But if it's not raining now, it's never going to be raining. Anybody else?
Well, you know, the budget that was delivered a week ago was like, it could have been delivered 2 years ago. I mean, the changes that we've seen in the last week are, you know, remarkable and remarkably bad. I think we have to think about whether we're going to hire a bunch of new people. I mean, that may not be something we can take on now, and those are the kinds of things that are in the budget. So I think we have to give the staff a chance to look at all the numbers again, because the budget projections, the income projections are going to be down. We're going to be in a deficit at the end of this fiscal year. You know, like everybody else, people aren't working. And, you know, people at Village Hall are still working, you know, which is great, but lots of other people who are consultants or who have jobs that aren't paying them beyond 2 weeks and that's it's going to be a big portion of our population. So I think we need to really think about, really need to think about how much we can actually spend. We're going to be spending some of our reserve. It's just how much of it we spend.
That's exactly right. I agree with that, Laura.
It's scary. It's really scary.
It's awful. And the sad thing is, in my opinion, it was always going to be bad, but it could have been mitigated if action had been taken earlier. But, you know, it's water under the bridge, and we got to deal with life is now. But, you know, as a person with children and grandchildren, I really resent that.
We all do.
Well, hopefully, after we hear from the waterworks, their presentation in April, we can take the water fees out of the budget and deal with those separately, because I just think we're going to have enough of a nightmare dealing with the changes to this budget without having the water fees in there unnecessarily.
Well, there's two things there. There's the sewer use fee,
Mhm.
which, you know, we really don't need the waterworks for, but we should, you know, take, and then there's the water fees, which are separate, right? Because we don't want to.
And I'm lumping them together, but yeah.
Right. We don't want to be in a position where if we don't raise our water rates, then we have to, you know, use our, because you have to pay for the water and the expenses one way or another. So if you don't raise it enough, then you got to take it out of the general fund. We don't want to be in that position.
No.
Victor?
Much has been said. So I'll try to just keep it to certain new points. But I would say, even looking at the letter that was sent to us, in two letter that introduces the budget. This is Jerry's letter to us, March 13th. In a couple areas, I was rereading it again today. It points out that actually, well, contrary probably to some headlines on the news or some funds or the stock exchange, whatever, the budget actually mentioned tight fiscal limitations. I'm reading from the budget, and continue to face overall shallow increases in revenue.
Mhm.
So we were essentially maintaining a good path, and that's why our fund balance is unassigned balance is 11 million, 30%.
Yep.
So it was healthy, and our accountants told us that was not too actually a good one, but not excessive. That was kind of the right mark.
Mhm.
So there we have it, and we have to be mindful then, or be glad that we have it, glad that we maintain this, and be very careful how we use it. Because in addition to what's happening, actually another very good thing on the budget is we have capital work, capital long-term capital, 5-year capital plan review that was pretty amazing, done by staff, the budget committee. And if you look at that, you see that the village will be subject to many millions of dollars. In addition to waterworks, infrastructure, the justification plant being our share of that being 30 million, which increases. And if we can only pay certain percentage of our budget in debt service, we're paying currently 7%. That's going to increase, and that's something we can't control. There are many things here we can't control. Revenue from sales tax is going to come down. Local revenue is going to come down. Debt service is probably going to increase. We know our pensions is increasing, healthcare is increasing. So I guess two things. Looking at, of course, the section 1, which is our operating budget, and see what can be done there. And of course, section 2, which is the projected revenues, and see what can be done. And I think the only thing I can ask or suggest to our staff is, what at some point you're probably gonna need some, not just guidance, but some tough decisions from us, saying you need to probably assume that this is gonna take until August or September. We have to make a kind of a day when we make assumptions if this schedule for the budget continues to be end of April. So you tell us in a week or 2 weeks, say, we need to go with these assumptions and make these changes and give you a revised budget, a red line version or some summary of it, something that's of course doable. So what is the next step? And probably the answer is not right now, not immediate, but that next step I think is the key one. What key assumptions are we going to make then to have a workable budget in case the legislature doesn't extend the budget to middle of the year at least. So that is kind of what I would leave open. What other assumptions? Of course, you're going to work on both sides, and then what kind of decisions? I would say it's pretty obvious that at least this is not going to change in 5 months, 4 months. we have to make those choices, and then you can work. What do you need to work? That's I think my position.
Okay.
Okay.
Tom, I have a comment if I can.
Sure.
Just so it's clear that nobody misunderstood what I said. I'm not suggesting or in favor of laying anybody off. That was not what I was talking about. But there is a couple of $100,000 in positions that are in the budget or proposed in the budget that are not fulfilled. And the question is, that is a avenue that I think needs to be reviewed very carefully, and that's what I'd like staff to try and look at that in a lot of other areas on how to curtail it. In terms of rainy day, this definitely is a pouring day, no question about it. The question is using the rainy day fund, which is your reserves or your savings account, for operations as opposed to other expenses. And when you prepare a budget, we're going into the future. Sometimes, just like people, when they have financial problems themselves, which they're now facing, everybody has to tighten their belts. And I'm not suggesting that the budget has fluff in it. I'm suggesting that all the programs, including the new programs and new staff, are all desirable. But maybe we have to defer it and can't afford it right now.
Thank you for your clarification.
I have one comment I forgot.
Yeah, sure, Vic.
This is in connection with the order on consent, which is the DEC order on consent that Jerry mentioned a couple of times. It is mentioned in the letter again, and I do, because it's an important element, and I don't want you to add more work to what you have, but somebody please forward that to me, because I've been following for years, but I lost track 6 months ago.
Sure.
I've been asking, I know you're terribly busy, but somebody has to give me the new schedule as to when the next work and some of the materials, because actually you did send one memo.
Yep.
In connection with some increases, but it didn't explain this area whatsoever.
So we were preparing for this evening.
I've been working on this for several years, so I was kind of waiting for this moment. Not at this time, unfortunately, it comes at this time.
Yeah. We would have been ready, Victor. We would have been ready this evening to present to you if we weren't in a state of emergency. Hernani was going to be scheduled to come to the meeting and work through the whole project.
Let's not get to it now. Can somebody send me the revised consent order?
Yeah.
I can read it.
Yeah, sure.
Look at the number. That's all I need. I don't need any analysis at this time.
Okay.
That's all I need.
We have it. Yeah. We packaged it all up and we were ready tonight, but this thing happened. So
then forward it. It's not worth it.
We will.
Sure. Okay. I think at our next Board of Trustees meeting, we have to work on the sewer rent fee. Because I think that's the first key to unlocking and helping staff to get some breathing room in this budget. Improving the sewer rent fee to take it out of the tax cap. So hopefully we can get that at the next board. Give all the backing and background for that. Does anybody else have any comments?
A question on that point. Then if we move forward with the sewer rent fee, the numbers will not change. Our budget is not changed. That section of the budget is not changing, correct?
No, the sewer rent fee directly impacts the tax rate. Yep. If we take it, right now, they included that money in the budget.
Incorporate
right.
That to become on the tax cap.
If we put it on the sewer rent fee, it puts us under the tax cap.
Correct.
That's what the discussion was the last one.
Except that I think we all need to bear in mind that it's the same, it's basically our taxpayers. And It, in the financial circles, it's called like off-balance sheet financing. You still have to consider it as the total package in terms of what the impact is to people who have to pay it.
Right, except the difference is it's a wider base, because people that are tax exempt have to pay for water, so they'll be paying the sewer rent fee. So
I understand.
the pain is spread in a different area, and also, if you're worried about your water bill, you could always use less water. Your property taxes are static. Once they're set, right? So you can't save money by not using part of your backyard, or not using room in your house. You still pay the same property taxes. But if you want to save money, you could use less water. And churches and businesses like restaurants are these days, but you know what I mean. Big users of water pick up more of that than Mrs. Smith over on Wagner Avenue. So to my view, it's a more fair way of spreading the pain. But it's got to happen. It's either if we don't take it out of here, then we're busting the cap. Then you got to pass this law to bust the cap. So,
Or we have to find ways to cut the expenses.
The money, there's a reason there's a sewer rent fee, and there's a reason it was enacted. To just ignore it and to not use it is not good government, especially when it evens out the payment. I mean, if this is money that we need to do consent order, it has to be spent. It's not discretionary money. So I hope the board really considers doing that at the next meeting, or get ready to break the cap, which I don't think anybody wants to do. Does anybody have any more comments or questions? Okay, need a motion to close this hearing. What?
This has to stay open.
It has to stay open.
Right.
Adjourn this till April 6th.
The next regular meeting, April 2nd.
April 6th. I don't need a motion, I don't.
No.
No, it's adjourned April
Leave it
6th.
open.
Wait a minute. The date,
I don't think April 6th.
no, not April 6th, April,
What meeting?
I
April,
believe it's April 13th.
yeah. That's the second,
Oh, the 2nd, you're right.
3 weeks.
Oh, that's right.
Making that mistake. I think it's the 13th and the 27th. I keep making the same mistake.
Yeah, because there's 5 Mondays in this month.
Yep.
All right. Adjourn to April 13th.
So move.
Second.
You don't have to vote,
Oh,
but thanks.
you're welcome.
Proposed local law to exceed tax cap. I recommend that we adjourn that to April 13th too.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Proposed, I'm sorry, public hearing PLLC 2020, voting authority for ex officio members of the Board of Traffic Commissioners. I need a motion to open this hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Call roll.
Trustees Winstrup,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas. Trustee Lucas,
Yes, yes.
trustee Tofor,
yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Okay, this is basically taking the police department representative and the fire department representative and making them non-voting members of the traffic commission. We've gone over this a few times. The police department, and I think the fire department has no problem with it, as long as they still have a vote. Does anybody have any questions or concerns?
In fact, it's the police department and the fire department that have asked that this be clarified.
So noted. And Kelly, you sit on that as the liaison.
Yep. And I can just provide some background that, for example, with the police department, they often rotate in a different officer every meeting. And so and when we vote on things at the traffic commission, often it's a discussion from the prior meeting and we vote. So to have the police officer try to weigh in doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's just best that we have the members of the Board of Traffic Commissioners voting members.
Okay,
I agree.
agree. Good. Anybody have any comments or concerns? Okay, hearing none. I need a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Second,
Please go to roll.
Trustees Winstrup,
Yes.
Natchez,
yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
the four,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Okay. I just want to say something. On this law, and I'm willing to close it and vote on it tonight because it's just so ministerial. But I think if we have to pass any laws in the future, we should close the public hearing and give the public 2 weeks to send in written notice before we vote on something. Just to,
I mean, while we're doing these electronic meetings.
yeah, well, exactly, no.
Yeah,
Well,
it's fine.
just because I don't want to hit anybody with a curveball and they didn't have a chance to, because this is, many people are going to find this cumbersome.
Yep.
I agree. I noticed the county is doing that, but allowing 10 days, and we have 2 weeks between meeting. I would suggest that we just say 13 days.
Fine. Or just until the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a motion to enact this law?
So moved.
Second.
Augie?
Trustees Winstrup,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
the four,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye,
Thank you. This is going to make the traffic commission meetings a little easier.
good.
When you get back to meeting.
First in the age of Corona. Okay, next is order the bills. Well, first we're gonna do budget transfers. Okay, the first budget transfer is for recreation, part-time. They're transferring from the uninsured legal expense in the manager's office to recreation part-time. Jerry, could you just go through what this part-time salary is for?
Mayor, we have someone from a part-time recreation assistant who has been helping us in the legal office since we moved Lisa to Public Works full-time. She doesn't split her time now. And so we just need to finish out the rest of the year with this slight budget amendment.
Okay, anybody have any questions or concerns?
No.
Okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Augustino?
Trustees Winstrup,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
the four. Trustee the four,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Okay, the next resolution is budget amendment for police department reimbursable overtime is what we talked about at the work session. This is taking monies that are paid by contractors to have police protection on street openings and such, directing traffic, and to take that money that is paid and to take it out of the revenue side and put it into the police department overtime line. Somebody have any questions or concerns? Okay.
No, except that I know the budget committee has made a recommendation that we adjust the formula for this, and maybe that's something we should consider doing.
Yep.
Sooner than later, like maybe put that on the next work session.
Or you want to call, I need a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Augustino?
Trustees Winstrup,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Tefor,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Pardon me. Resolution authorizing budget transfers for village justice contract service. Office equipment line and contract service line of $423.65. Minor adjustment.
Yeah.
Does somebody have any questions or concerns?
No.
Okay. The motion?
So moved. Second.
Augie?
Trustees Winstrup,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Tefor,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye.
Sit down. Can you please open up the public hearing on local law for tax cap before you adjourn it?
I have to open it up before I can adjourn.
You have to-
Oh, we'll go back.
Yeah.
We're gonna go back to tax cap in a minute. Resolution authorizing budget transfers for tree service and maintenance. Various departments is up to 36,277 going to shade tree contractual service. Jerry, you want to talk about this a second?
Mayor, it's Tony's request to bring in a little bit more money. We're trying to catch up on some trees that have been deferred in the past that need to come down. As we've seen in recent weeks, that Tony has a list. People find out that the tree is coming down, and it gets questioned, and then Tony provides the information regarding the issues and the documentation of the trees being in bad shape. One of those recent situations occurred at Harbor Island Park, another one on Carroll Avenue. So he's asking for some additional money to be able to finish out the trees. That's a request directly from him.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? I'll make the motion.
Second.
What we do?
Trustees Winstrup,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Tefor,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Before we go to the abstract, we're just gonna circle back. Public hearing, PLD 2020 for local law to exceed the tax cap for fiscal year 2020 and 2021. Augie tells me I have to open the meeting before I can adjourn. So I'll make a motion to open that meeting.
Second.
Augustino?
Trustees Winstrup,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Tefor,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Okay, and we're gonna, now that it's open, we're gonna adjourn this to April 13th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you all. Now going back, is the abstract of the ordered vouchers. There's two tonight. There's two, aren't there? Isn't there a?
There is.
Yeah,
The second.
a little one.
The abstract of ordered vouchers is $919,355.83. Questions or concerns? Okay, hearing none.
I'm sorry, what was the total on this one that we're looking at?
$919,355.83.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. One is on page 1.
Yes.
The library district and the Evelyn Theater. I thought they would pay, we pay their bills, or I thought they paid their bills? Jerry, Augie?
I'm gonna have to ask Augie on that one.
What page is that?
Page 1.
Page 1.
Utility.
It's utilities, NIPA.
That's correct.
We pay them.
What's correct?
Basically, we they get the utilities through the Village of Mamaroneck because they pay a lower rate, and then they reimburse us. So we pay these persons,
Okay.
bill them to reimburse for that.
Thank you.
Okay, that helps. Go to page 9. First entry. On the Westchester Waterworks, this says monthly charges. This is the water used at that location?
Did you say page 9?
Page 9, first entry.
Yeah,
Westchester
147
General.
Mamaroneck
This
Avenue.
warehouse?
Yeah. It's a firehouse.
Yeah.
Okay, so each building is separately
Metered.
metered. Okay.
Yep.
Go to 31. There's an entry for Flagler Drive for 92,000 plus. Can anybody tell me what that actually is for?
Yeah, I think we pulled the bills today.
All I saw, and I just did I did a quick look through the phone, which is very difficult for me to do. All I saw was numbers, invoice numbers, no explanation.
Well, it's probably the last payment on the Flagler Drive project.
I understand, but that doesn't really tell me anything. I'd like to know what the specifics were for.
I thought we made the last payment in August, but that was what presented then.
No, I think when the Westchester General Waterworks came, they even said there'd probably be no payment.
I still would like to get more information on that, please. I suggest that we pay the abstract less this and have them give us more information on it.
I think that's a bad idea, given the current situation with litigation in this village. I think that's playing into somebody else's hand.
Tom, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm talking about, just let me finish. I'm talking about, we have it in front of us an abstract that has a line that I don't understand. Particularly since when the question was raised back in August, it was our understanding that was the last bill. Maybe not, maybe is. I just don't know, and I don't know what it's for, and I'm uncomfortable paying for it without an explanation. I saw that Victor asked for that explanation. I quickly looked through the phone, and all I saw was no invoice numbers, no explanation.
Let me point something out. We paid another Flagler bill in November. November 13th, we paid $121,000 in Flagler. August 27th, we paid $646. November 13th, what's left, the remainder is $92,251.11. This is for Flagler Drive water main replacement. It's right here. It's not for something else. It's for the Flagler Drive water main replacement that is, we all know, has been the subject of much controversy and a lawsuit in this community. And the number corresponds directly to what is on here, Flagler Drive water main replacement. And there are a bunch of bills, and they're all for the same thing, the water main replacement.
It would be nice to know what that covered in that. And if it was done before, it doesn't mean that it was right, and maybe I overlooked that. But if I had more time, I looked through it, that's what I came up with. That's where my concern is.
Okay. Well, you're marching right into over the cliff here.
I'm marching into what?
You are playing into the hand of people who are suing us.
I don't think that one has anything to do with the other.
I think that's absurd, but if you want to make a motion to take it out, and if you get 3 votes, you can take it out.
I so move.
Okay, I don't hear a second. So nobody else have any questions or concerns? Need a motion to accept the order of vouchers, $919,350.83.
So moved.
I'll second. Augustino.
Trustees Winstrup,
Yes.
Natchez,
No.
Lucas,
Yes.
the four,
Yes.
to four,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Thank you. Good job.
Sure.
The next order of vouchers is really all phone charges, right, Ogie?
Yes.
Could you explain what BCM1 is?
BCM1 currently now provides our telephone services and data services. We should have this company on board for another month and a half, and then we'll convert it over to the new phone system.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? Need a motion?
Second.
All in favor? No, roll, I'm sorry.
Trustees Winstrup,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
the four,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Okay, thank you. What I did. Let's see here.
Found it.
These are yours. Ogie. Thank you. New business, a resolution scheduling public hearing on 50-foot setback requirement.
Wait, we skipped old business.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Resolution scheduling public hearing PLLA on dogs in the park. Dogs and this isn't ready, right?
Well, it's not ready, but I think that we got a recommendation from the Recreation Committee. And so to try and do some sort of a trial, and we haven't even discussed that. So I think this is very confusing because there's all sorts of backup. I think this one says we're scheduling a public hearing for tonight. So I think we should simply put it back on the work session to discuss it in 3 weeks and get all this backup off the regular agenda.
Okay.
That's fine.
So let's just not make a motion or anything on this, and we'll just take it off.
Well, do we have to make a motion to take it off? I mean, we're not gonna adopt the law probably as it's recommended.
Okay, let's put it back on work session.
Okay.
Okay. The tree law, that's still in the making, right?
Well, I think that's the same kind of. I think the tree committee and Jerry and Bob and Christy have all worked on a revised draft. I'm sure they didn't have in the last 2 weeks to think about it. But I think, again, if that draft could be ready in 3 weeks, we can have that discussion at the work session too.
Okay, your audio's kind of going in and out, a little choppy, but I heard you. You want to put it on the work session.
So I think it should be on the work session because I think that the revised draft based on public comments is close to being ready. That's a question for Bob and Christy.
Okay, so let's put these back on the work session.
Yes, please.
Is everybody fine with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, Nora.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. New business. Resolution scheduling public hearing 50-foot setback requirement. Now, I noticed that this is scheduled for May 26, 2020. The only caveat I would have Is that, and we could schedule it for that, but if we're still doing this, we should just hold it over. And hopefully, I mean, maybe we'll be back to regular meetings on May 26th.
So, Mayor, did everyone get the revised version that was circulated this morning based on Trustee Natchez's suggestions?
I got it, but I haven't had time to study it.
Okay. Then maybe you want to hold off, because that's the version I think Trustee Natchez thinks the board should be holding a public hearing on.
So we hold off for 3 weeks and then circulate it in 3 weeks?
You're right. Or do it tonight and you'll use the revised version tonight. The changes are minor. I think they're enough that they'd be a problem if you voted to hold the public hearing on this, but they're really not something that requires going back to a work session over.
Well, why don't we do this during the next meeting? And instead of making it for the 26th of May, let's make it for the first meeting in June. That gives us a better chance of having some degree of normalcy.
Mayor, before you,
Victor, go ahead.
I had also mentioned the fact that it was not clear the area or properties being affected, and they were going. Greg, who has just joined, is going to give us that information. He told us in an email he was going to prepare it. He will prepare it, so that would give us clarity of the area properties being impacted. I think that's important. And I also mentioned, I also gave offered some whereas clauses to the resolution, because they relate to the package that's being prepared. You know, what we're looking at in order to do this, so that could be prepared in the meantime, as well as the coastal assessment form. You need to have the whole packet before you circulate it. So you'll also help us with a good package before it goes out.
Okay, so we'll have this on to be scheduled next week. Not next week, you know what I mean? Next
3
week.
weeks. Okay.
And we'll try and schedule it for June, and maybe we'll be back to some degree of normalcy.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll have all the documents that you need in order. So I'll have the TAF, the narrative, all of the mapping that you requested for your next meeting.
Thanks, Greg.
And I know on this one, we were going to send notices to all the affected property owners. I know someone appeared at one of the meetings and said that would be nice this time. We said we would be able to do that. So we'd have plenty of time to do that before June, but we could get a head start.
We can't send them a notice until we actually have a draft that we're going to recommend.
Yes.
So, and I think we need to know how many properties there are, because I think it's more important for them to go. I mean, they may want to be able to participate in the other reviews, the other land use boards that look at it too. So I think maybe we need to figure out a way of, because we can't notice it 3 or 4 times. So I think we need to figure out how to get information out there.
Yeah, so I think this will be a bigger discussion at our next meeting in April.
Yeah,
Yep.
We need to think about that.
Yep.
Okay, are you talking about sending notices to each individual property, different from what, just a general notice, here's the map, this will be affected? Are you talking about the individual notices?
Yeah, I'm talking about individual notices.
Okay, well, let's figure out first the area, how many are impacted, and then distinguish from other processes we've made. Because then we'll have to be consistent on that.
Yeah, that'll be a discussion in April.
Okay.
All right. That's a good plan. Pardon me. Communications to board round 2. I don't think there's anybody on the dock. Oh, you want to slip through?
Nobody's on.
Nobody on the dock. Report from the village manager.
Mayor, I have an emergency declaration to file for the record, but I can also provide the board and the public some information regarding the local orders. We are on round 2 as of Friday for the local orders, if that's permissible.
Please do.
So the local state of emergency was enacted on March 16th. There are many, many provisions. It's online. Anyone can read it. But to go through very quickly, a few things. These board meetings, as well as the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, Harbor Coastal Zone Management Commission, and the Board of Architectural Review will be conducted by electronic means. Village Hall this week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, we will be closed. Village Hall will be open only on Wednesday, March 25th from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Many of our employees are working from home, and they're doing a great job. I have a tendency to throw things at our employees and expect them to respond very quickly, and all of them have. So I'm very proud of them that they're able to adjust so effectively. As far as the playgrounds are closed. At the parks, we expect people, because we want to keep them open, we expect people to maintain the social distancing practices. We have suspended parking meters. We have also suspended 326.99 and 326.102 of the residential parking permits. And that's about it for the state of emergency orders. And I do need to file this for the record, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jerry, thank you for the hard work that you and the staff have put in.
Yep.
Report from Clerk Treasurer.
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
Report from Village Attorney.
Nothing from me, Mayor.
Okay, we have minutes from boards and committees. Minutes from board trustee work session and regular session from March 20th. No, I'm sorry, March 9th, 2020. Minutes of Board of Architecture review meeting for February 4th, 2020. And minutes of the Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee for January 9th, 2020. If there is anybody watching out there or watchers in the future, please, a lot of our restaurants in the community are doing takeout and delivery. And so, if you can still eat at your favorite place, if they're doing that, these businesses are hanging on by a thread. There's a lot of waitresses and bartenders that lost their jobs a couple weeks ago, and they're going to be out of work for a while. And, I know a lot of waitresses and bartenders, and they aren't known for their saving habits. So there's going to be a lot of people in dire straits soon. So if you can, if you have the means, and if you're lucky, like a lot of us, to still have a job, please consider giving to a charity in this community that'll help ameliorate some of the real suffering that's going to happen within the next couple of months. There's going to be a lot of people that are hungry. If we can keep that from happening in our community, and I know we can, and I know there are people in this community, and I know we can, and there's not a child that should go to bed hungry. So please look at the local charities and reach out to local restaurants, and it'd be a nice family thing to get a nice dinner and bring it home, the kids' favorites. So we will see you all in April.
Wait, don't forget the census, because everybody should have gotten their forms. And I did my online census, and we help friends who aren't computer savvy to do it. It's really, really easy. And it's going to be much harder to get people to go to door this year. They've delayed their efforts by at least 2 weeks. So just make a push to do your online census and get other people to do it too.
No, you're 100% right. That census is very, very important to us, and it's going to be more important in the future as we try and recover from what happens here in this community. So everybody out there and all my colleagues, please stay safe. I wish you all well and your families all well. And hopefully we'll all be here on April 13th to continue to build the business of village government. I'm very proud of the way this community has reacted, especially the staff. They couldn't have done more to rise to the occasion. I really appreciate it. I know the board appreciates it, and I know the people of this community appreciate it. So we'll keep doing what we're doing and keeping the lights on, and we'll get through this together. I need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Good night. Thank you.
You.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
And thanks, Cliff.
Yeah, thanks, Cliff. It worked.
Good job.
That went well.
Okay.
Everybody.
Good night.
Bye. Bye.